Not so long ago, I was in a supermarket walking down the aisle and I overhear someone make the comment, "Now that is a bold colour." And you know what it's like in those moments? You react, and I instinctively turned and began to look for some bold colour, and I couldn't see anything that really stood out to me in that moment until I realised that all the way down the far end, in the fruit aisle, was a lady in a long, bright orange dress pushing a trolley. And at that moment in time, she was right in front of the oranges. If someone says to you, "What does boldness look like?" In terms of colour, you think of something very vivid. Perhaps if it was about a person, it would be someone who's very confident. When you think in this last season of people who've made bold statements, perhaps one of those that you think of is on that Sunday evening when our Prime Minister Boris Johnson was sat in front of a single camera at his desk making an announcement to our nation that we would now be needing to sacrifice our social commitments and our social lifestyle so that others who are more vulnerable can be as safe as possible during the next weeks and months. That was a bold statement. That was a bold announcement to make. Perhaps you can think of someone that you know of and you've had conversation with lately who works on staff with the NHS, and you've been hearing the stories of them having to make bold decisions in their work, in their vocation. And we've been celebrating week on week the amazing work that the NHS are doing. Unfortunately, there are some people who speak about someone with a description and a degree of boldness to mask that they're feeling uncomfortable by what they're interpreting as someone who's over assertive or bossy. When I think of leaders and leadership, I've never heard of a leader who leads with timidity or who leads with cowardice. There's no story that I'm aware of where someone leads well in that way. And I mean, frankly, people who might find themselves in that situation probably aren't leading. There's this moment of real boldness in Luke's Gospel where Jesus is in the synagogue and he's stood in front of all the people who are in attendance and the leaders, and Luke tells us that he's handed a scroll and he unrolls the scroll and it's from Isaiah 61 and he reads this. Luke chapter 4. He reads, "The Spirit of the Lord is upon me because he has anointed me to proclaim good news to the poor. He has sent me to proclaim liberty to the captive and recovering the sight of the blind, to set at liberty those who are oppressed, to proclaim the year of the Lord's favour." I want to encourage you, read this. It's Luke chapter 4, verses 18 and 19. And just that passage, you see how Jesus upsets the people because he's making such a bold claim about himself in the midst of a company who thought quite highly of themselves. And what we know from Jesus is that he recognized publicly that this was true of him. He recognized publicly that this was true of his calling. And what we see him go on to do is take 12 men on a journey and they change their world. That's Jesus in bold leadership. Now, I want to encourage you to read that because I really believe that for us today, there's something as a disciple, as a follower, as a lover of Jesus, that this speaks into our lives as well, and certainly as a leader. And I don't see a world that's looking for overly assertive, bossy people, but I do see a world that's longing for leaders who are going to be bold, leaders who are going to bring confidence and are going to be vivid. It's going to be clear that they're leading from their best selves. And when I think back to the story I just started with of the lady in the orange dress, do you know, it wasn't the color of the dress that makes her bold. I mean, when I looked around, I didn't even see her. She was stood in front of the oranges. She just blended in. It wasn't the color that made her bold. It was her decision to put on a dress like that. Today, we need leaders who are going to be bold. And I want to challenge you today to recognize your time as a leader to wear leadership with boldness.